So I get together with my team, and we laid out the year way back at the end of last year, and I was so excited about July and freedom, and I was looking forward to it throughout the whole year to prep for it and get ready. And so when we hit this topic, I remember it stopped me in my tracks, because I was like, wait, what is that supposed to be? You know, and so I just let it be for a bit and realized, well, something will come to me, you know. And then so as soon as I left on my vacation, I brought all my stuff because I wanted to get ahead, you know, because I was behind, so I wanted to get ahead on things. And as soon as we left, I got on the plane on the way to Michigan, and I looked at my stuff, and I said, the common denominator, what is that about? I didn't have any notes on it or anything, and I was like, all right, well, we'll see what shows up. Well, a whole lot of stuff showed up. Have you been in an airport lately? Let me tell you, a lot of stuff shows up in the airport. And so I thought about it. I thought about it all the way there, and then I thought about it all, and it had some kind of, you know, my people watching part of me had some ideas, and then the whole family dynamic of the family reunion happened. And since I told, I'll be light on that, since I told everybody about my YouTube channel now, so my family can watch it. So we're just gonna, it was great. It was really great. It was really great. There was really to write home about. But and then coming home, and so our flight on the way home was on the way to Vegas. I'm going to rethink that next time. But on the way to Vegas, everybody's really excited about going to Vegas. We were surrounded by like groups of, there were 12 people in front of us. It was happening like they left the kids at home and they're going to Vegas with all their buddies. You can just imagine what that was like. And then behind us was another group that was like, woohoo, we're going to party, the youngins. So we had the other group, the older group in front of us that was partying, and then the young ones behind us who were just dressed for the party. You know, you got the picture of that. And so that was really fun. But then we got on our flight from Vegas to San Diego. And that's all the people who were leaving Las Vegas, right? And that was it was much quieter. It was a much quieter flight. They may have been drinking just as much, but it was a different kind of drinking. They were it was a little sadder than, you know, the party's over. It's kind of that. So anyway, so here I am trying to figure out in the middle of all this, what's the common denominator? And so what came up for me, and it was, well, prayer. You know, every religion has some sort of prayer. Maybe prayer is the common denominator that I want to talk about today. Okay, well maybe, and that sat with me for a little while. And then I was like, well right now for humanity. Our humanity is our common denominator, right? Okay, and I sat with that for a little while. And you know I always go back to God. It's God. You know, God, the presence, the power, that's the common denominator. That's the thing that links all of us. And if you look into each and every philosophy, there's some idea that there's a presence within us. There's that seed of consciousness within us. There's that Christ consciousness. There's that divine spark. There's the presence that moves through all things. If you look at Buddhism, all of those ideas. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting there. I was getting there. Okay, God. And then I got to the fact that the truth is that love is the common denominator. And so I was thinking about it as I was putting this together after spending a week with my family. I was thinking of my older brother John, who's my engineer. You know, he's a patent attorney who has a master's in electrical engineering. He's very intelligent and he's brilliant and very linear, right? And what he would say if I had said that I was going to get up and talk about love is the common denominator. And I was like, this one's for you, Johnny. This one's for my big brother. Because it's true, God as love, God as the powerful presence of love is the thing that connects all of us. And it's that thing that is wanting to be experienced. It's that thing that each of us craves in the center of our being. We don't thrive without love in our lives. We don't thrive without love in our lives. And the way that outpictures is our sense of belonging. Is our sense of connection and our sense of belonging. You know, for so long I've been hearing, people have been saying, you're in the church business, church is dying, you know, and that people don't want church in their lives anymore, and all of this, other ways of doing ministry and all of this, which is great, and I believe that, but at the core, I firmly believe that each and every one of us needs a place to belong. We need to have a place where we can go to when we hit the rough patches, you know, because life is going to happen. I can help you, I can teach you spiritual tools and techniques to minimize that, to call forth what it is that you're wanting. We can talk about how we can change our minds and use our words to create what we want in our life. We can talk about that till the cows come home, and you can start to do that, but the truth is life is going to happen. And the reason why we have those tools is because life is going to happen. And my goal for us in this spiritual community is to create a space where you know we're here. You know we're here. Maybe you go on vacation and you don't come one Sunday, that's fine, but life is going to happen. And we're going to be here when it does. Our spiritual practitioners who pray for us, our ministers, and everyone who teaches for us, and all of that, we are here to create a space, a sacred space for each of us to know that we belong. And so belonging is a need for us to thrive in this life. It is something that each and every one of us needs to have an experience of. There's a social psychologist and Stanford professor named Gregory Walton, and he, through a series of ongoing studies, found that as humans, it is a core need to belong to one another, to our friends and our families, to culture, country, to the world. We need to feel like this is a place for us. And sometimes so many of us don't feel like it. Sometimes we can have an experience that how did I get here, right? How did I get into this life? How did I get here? Am I an alien? Because sometimes I feel that way. Just me? Yeah, just me. I'll just own it. It's me. But belonging is primal, and it's fundamental to our sense of happiness and well-being. Belonging has consequences to us. Our interests, our motivation, our health and happiness are tied to the feeling that we belong to a greater community that may share common interests and aspirations. The issue is that loneliness and isolation can harm our sense of well-being, as well as our intellectual achievement, our immune function, and our health. Research showed, Gregory Walton's research showed that even a single instance of exclusion can undermine our well-being, reduce our IQ test performance, and our self-control. Once. Feeling excluded once can shift that. He also found that a sense of social belonging can affect our motivation and our continued persistence, even in impossible tasks. So when you feel like you belong, you're more likely to try to stretch. You're more likely to live out on your growing edge. You're more likely to discover some of the amazing things about you that you don't realize yet, that you're stronger than you think, that you have more talents than you think, that you have more capabilities than you think are even possible for you. When you feel like you belong, you're more likely to explore that. That's what we try to do here. Because we understand that there is a common denominator. This life that we're living is the expression of God. I had a dear friend who lost his father a couple weeks ago. And it was really interesting for me to hear the story of this man. He moved his family from New Jersey to Colorado. And I think about what that shift must have been like to move from urban New Jersey, from Newark to the hills of Colorado. That culture shock. But that being aside, when he got to town, he went to the Catholic Church where he worshipped, and he said to the priest, "What do we do to support the poor?" And the priest said to him, "We don't have poor here." All right, and so what did he do? He said, "Well, that can't be true." And he went on to live these many, many years. It was 30 years, I think. And he later he created program after program to support the people of their small town. He created a food bank, and he created a jobs program, and he created counseling for people who are close to the edge, and he created all of these things. And when he passed, what they were reminded of is what he said is, your hands are the only hands that God has. And that's how he lived his life, is that his hands were the only hands that God had. And so who are we waiting for to take care of the people around us? He felt like he belonged to this world so much that he had to give his gift unto others. That our hands are the only ones that God's got. We are the only channel through which the divine comes into being in this life. And so we are called. I say that a lot. We are all called to be who we are and to see what is in front of us and what's ours to do. To reach out a hand and say, I'm sorry you're hurting. To see someone clearly, even though they're in their stuff, you've ever been around someone who's in their stuff? To say to them, you know what, I know you have all you need to take care of this. I know that you're supported enough that you can get through this, you can get through anything. That's what it means to belong. That's what it means to be an active participant. And you know what, that's how we get our freedom. Our freedom comes from stepping into knowing who we are and not being held back by any idea of lack, by any idea of what someone else is going to think of us if I do a sermon on love. That's what it means to express love, to speak the words of truth, and to share who we are with those around us and create community. I am one of those people who creates community wherever I am, even in the ladies' room in the Detroit airport. We almost had a prayer circle there. You never know when you find me on traveling, you never know what's going to come. So Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, said, and the science of mind, I put it up here because it's a long one, but sorry about that. It's a good one. This is from the chapter on what the mystics have taught under the section of unity. He says this, that there is no place where God is not. This concept enabled Job to say, in my flesh shall I see God. All life is bound together by one common law of love, and love is the self-givingness of spirit. It was the realization of this one presence which illumined the saints and sages of the past. I and the Father are one. The Father dwelleth in me. He doeth the works. We must come to sense this marvelous presence, for this is the secret of successful metaphysical work, God in and through all. All manifestation of life is from an invisible to a visible plane, through a silent, effortless process of spiritual realization. We must unify in our own mentalities with pure spirit. It starts by going in and realizing that you have a direct connection to the presence and the power that's bigger than you. That's why prayer is important. Prayer is the common denominator, because prayer connects us and reminds us that we're greater than we think our problems are. Remember, I love to say that don't tell God about your problems, tell your problems about your God. So this is called practicing the presence. And Michael Beckwith in our book that for the month tells us, he calls it beholding. He calls it beholding our true nature. It's communing with the essence and presence so much that we begin to awaken to the fact that something else is happening here. Our meditation, our spiritual practices remind us of that. So when we see something, when we look around our life, when we are present with what's going on in our own lives and in the lives of the people that we love, can we behold it? Which means you can see not only the challenge, but you can see how they can rise beyond the challenge. How that they have everything that they need not only to experience it, but that for them to wake up to what is being called forth. I had an interesting experience on this trip. My family has loved me from afar during my health challenge of the last 3 years. And particularly my sister, who is very close with me, and she's a Pilates instructor and has this amazing Pilates studio that she started, and it was really fun to be there and to see her clients. But I realized how much she talks about me. Because when you meet them, oh, you're Kathy. That's how they know me, by the way. Oh, you're Kathy. Oh, and so I had all of these conversations with her Pilates clients who she'd been talking to about me for 3 years, right? And who had been following my journey and who were just so happy to come and celebrate the fact that I've been cancer-free, which is really great. And so one of the women was sharing her path. And, I love people's stories. And I sat there and listened to her, and we had this conversation, and she was telling me about her battle with cancer. And I had to stop her halfway. She was asking me about mine, and I stopped her, and I said, you know what, I have to just explain to you that I never fought my cancer. I said, I don't ascribe to that view of it. I danced with it differently. And she said, well, what do you mean about that? I said, well, listen, I got to tell you something, that whenever I fought anything, I've lost in my life. I'm not a good fighter. And that's physical, that's debate, that's, whatever. I said, but what I did was I realized that life happens, and when stuff happens in our lives, we have a choice. We can either rise or we can succumb to it. I know that when something happens in my world, and to me personally, it's to wake me up to something else that needs some attention. It's change. Not only cancer, not only other health challenges, but job changes, situations. Everything happens to us to wake us up to growing, to expanding. And I said to her, I tried not to preach at her, but I said to her, for me personally, what I realized is that I've got a choice. I'm either going to succumb to, get in that hole and be in the cancer hole and let that determine my experience in the rest of my life, or I'm going to rise. And I'm going to know that there's something else that's calling me to expand and to grow in a different way. And she looked at me with these open eyes and she said, that's amazing. And I was like, well, I don't have a choice in that. And I was thinking of that in terms of our path here, because how many things do we go up to battle against, right? We can battle against health challenges. We can battle against food challenges, right? Let me tell you, anybody trying to eat clean? I got a dance performance next week. I'm trying to eat. I'm on austerity measures for a week to get on stage in a leotard. I don't know what I was thinking. What was I thinking? Okay, I'll deal with that later. But so I'm battling against the food, right? I'm battling against my weight. Sometimes we get into these challenges, conflicts with people in our lives, and we battle against a dynamic with other people. I don't fight. Nobody wins. Setting ourselves up to have a winner and a loser is not an expression of God. For me, there's got to be a win-win. There's got to be a way to allow us to step into our greatness, into our knowing, into our power without defeating somebody else. And so I was realizing that it's about rising. It's about stepping into a new consciousness. And it's in all of our experiences. And so, of course, I'm coming off the dynamics of a family reunion and realizing how crazy our relationships can be, right? Things get complicated. It was a beautiful example of everything that's going on in the world for me right now. Because you know what? Things get complicated and they get complex. And then something will happen, and then somebody will say something, and somebody else will get offended, and they'll get really upset, and they'll go slam a drawer somewhere and grab another drink, and then they'll come back here, and then they'll say something else and then somebody else gets upset, and then it's just snowballs into this big family, It's crazy, which did not happen at my family reunion. It really didn't. It could have, but it didn't. Right? It was a great time. But I could see how it would happen. And I can see how easily things evolve into chaos in our lives, right? And we have a choice. We have a choice whether we're going to succumb to the complexity of it and just get taken away with the emotion of it, or we can go back to what I like to do is go back to the basic foundation. I love this person. I want them to have what they need. I want to have what I need, and I want them to have what they need. And so that's why this month, when we're doing our Sacred Circles on freedom, when we're talking about freedom, and Beth did the reading today, that we paired freedom and forgiveness together. They go hand in hand. The spiritual practice of forgiveness is the thing that allows us to experience more freedom than anything else in our lives. Because when we can practice forgiveness, it's not for the other person, it's for ourselves. We've been carrying around that baggage, and that luggage does not have wheels on it. It's heavy. And we've been carrying it around for years. And so when we are able to let go of the things of the past, when we are able to get back to that foundation of knowing, you know what, I love this person. I want them to have what they want. I know that they are the expression of the divine and deserve to be fulfilled just like I do. I remembered the teaching from A Course in Miracles, which says that everything is either an expression of God's love or a call for it. Everything that happens is either an expression of the divine love, of God's love, or it's a call for it. And so when you look at your relationships, when you look at the situations in your life from that perspective, you can start to see clearly that this person who I'm having a challenge with is just trying to get their love in their own way of being able to understand how they can do it. It's not the way I would do it. It's not how I would ask. But there's still their desire, their purpose, their goal is to experience divine love and belonging. They're feeling separated. And so how can I let go of whatever I need to let go of to just go back to that foundation and realize that we're just two people who want love? That we're two people who are craving that connection. And how we can let go of the things that have happened and plug in, right? I've also had a lot of experience trying to figure out different plugs for iPads and phones and how we can charge everything while you're traveling. We had that too with kids, traveling with kids. Man, it's all about plugging in. And so I keep thinking of that. How can we find the right plug to plug into the foundation of who we are, our hearts directly? That's the goal here. How we can move into a place of realizing that when we can get to that, we can let everything else go. What we're being called to is to see others with what's called sympathetic understanding. I was inspired by the words of Marcel Proust, who said this: "The only true voyage would be not to visit strange lands, but to possess other eyes, to see the universe through the eyes of another, of 100 others, to see the 100 universes that each of them sees." And one of my colleagues, his name is Reverend Jeff Anderson, has a beautiful book about spirituality and nature. And he says this: "You've learned from someone else how something should be done. In school, we're taught that there is one right answer. We love to be right and have become experts in collecting evidence to reinforce our positions. The invitation here is to hold right and wrong very lightly. Awareness gives us understanding of what our positions are, which allows us to understand others' positions and their positions more expansively. This is the divine design. If there was no diversity of position, there would be no choice and no free will." Sympathetic understanding. Part of our vision in the Centers for Spiritual Living is to create a world that works for everyone. We've been walking around saying that for about 10 years now. And here in the 100th year, I was reminded this week that we're celebrating 100 years of science of mind. But for, I'd say about the last 10, we had cast this vision of creating a world that works for everyone. And so what does that mean to have that vision? It means for each of us to step up to help create it. It means for each of us to step up and create a circle of peace and harmony in our world. And the way that we do that is by starting to create a circle of peace and harmony within our minds and within our hearts. And so forgiveness comes in because we are called to forgive ourselves. We are called to start on the inside and look from the inside out. So we are called to forgive ourselves for those mistakes that we think we've made, for those silly comments that we made when we didn't really mean to, for the judgment that we put out because we were asleep in a moment, for all of those things that you judge yourself harshly for. It's time to lay it down. It's time to let go of it. It's time to step forward and realize that you're okay, that it happened, and it's time to step up, to rise, and not succumb to the guilt, not succumb to the shame, not succumb to those negative emotions. When something, everything is in possibility in the mind of God, but when something happens, it's God ordained. There's a reason. So if you were the channel through which something was said that might not have been the kindest, I'm not making it okay for us to just say whatever we want to whomever it is. That's not the way right now. It seems to be the way right now, but it's not what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is that you got to give yourself a break. It's for something that's happened, because we can't change that. But you can lay down your guilt about it, and you can lay down your shame about it, and you can realize, again, I'm going to say it, I say it all the time, that your mind sometimes is the least safe place for yourself in your life. But my goal is for it to be the most safe place for you in your life. Because when you go into your mind, you connect with the infinite divine that loves you more than you could ever imagine. That there's a power and a presence that's right at the center of your being that wants your peace, your joy, your happiness. And so it's okay to practice forgiveness for yourself. Because when you can start to practice forgiveness for yourself, then you can start to see through those new eyes that Marcel Proust was talking about. You can start to see that you know what, I was raised this way and someone else could have been raised differently. Sometimes we ascribe our own understanding of what life has been like to somebody else's, to the picture of somebody else. Anybody been on Facebook lately? Right? I always say that it's the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to us. We get to stay connected, but then we have this idea that we are living in comparison. And people only post those beautiful pictures and the beautiful places when they're having a great time. But as soon as the camera went off, they can tell you about, all the other stuff that happened. The hurricane that came in on a vacation and the food poisoning that someone got and the blah, blah, blah. I saw someone's trip to Europe recently and was so excited for them. I get really excited when people have great adventures and great things because I know that they're coming for me too. I'm having them too, but they're having their great adventures. And I was talking about their trip to Europe and so happy about it and excited about it, and they were like, oh my God, it was the worst thing ever. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I had a stomach virus for all 3 weeks we were there. And I was like, well, wait, what? Every day you were posting pictures smiling in front of castles and in front of museums and all these things. She's like, yeah, and then I threw up. And I was like, okay, great. You never know what somebody else's experience is. And if you think about that, just think about everything that we assume somebody else has. Or everything else we assume that somebody else is experiencing. We don't know. We're being called to awaken to the fact that if we are interested in someone's experience, we ask them about it. And then we learn more about them, right? It takes a willingness and stepping out to not assume something about someone else, but to inquire. Because we care. And when we inquire into somebody else's experience, what do we build? We build belonging. We build that bridge. I thought this morning that Science of Mind is here for us to build bridges, not dig ditches. I thought that was good. Someone should write that down. Yep. We're here to build bridges. Build bridges to our own understanding, build bridges to the presence that God is. We're here to build bridges within different religions. I believe that religious science and the science of mind is the first interfaith religion that existed. Because we honor the divine truth in all religions. We honor all paths to God. But it also allows us to build a bridge to the heart of the person you're sitting next to. Whether it's your beloved, or a stranger, or your enemy, or whatever you want to call them. We are here to realize that all of us are necessary and needed in this life, and that we need to belong to something. Truth is, we belong to each other. And if there was one teaching from Jesus that I would say that, Jesus' main teachings were about that. We're about understanding God, that the presence and the power is at hand, that heaven is at hand, that the kingdom of heaven is within, that the Father and I are one. All of those connections to God and to one another, and that the commandment, most of all, is love. Those are the teachings of Jesus. He came to show us a way of being fully expressed in this life. And how to be in relationship infused in that power and that presence of love. And so, again, Ernest Holmes says this. He captures that vision of a world that works for everyone by saying this. It's intended that we all live together in peace. Do away with prejudice. Know the needs of one another. Learn to respect one another. We are all so much alike on the inside, but unity does not mean uniformity. Each of us is our own, this is me, each of us is our own expression of that divine life. Have we kindness for each other? Are we flexible enough to know that everyone does not have to think alike in order to live together harmoniously? Back of all, we need a sympathetic understanding of one another. Ernest Holmes says it right there. A sympathetic understanding. And so, the spiritual practice of sympathetic understanding, I'm adding a new one. You got meditation, you got prayer, you got visioning, you've got all of these things, and there's a new one, developing a sympathetic understanding. And so that's listening to one another, really listening, to pay attention of what's going on in the person that you're with, to be open to respect others, temporarily suspending your own beliefs and your point of view to be present with a group that you're with, to forgive yourself and others for that which has caused pain, sadness, and to lift our consciousness. To lift our consciousness, to rise into that place, out of the muck, out of the mire, out of the complexity of how things get crazy, into that knowing that there's something greater here. That there's some reason why we have been brought together to travel this life in this small sliver of time on this amazing big ball that's spinning through and hurling through the universe. We chose it in some way. And there's a reason why we're here together. And it's time for us to wake up to realize that we need to start to explore that. We need to have this new eyes to see that there's something else operating here. And we start within our own selves. And it's the basic foundation of this. Can you accept yourself as you are? Can you realize that you belong? You belong to yourself. You belong to God. And when you can say yes to that, you can allow yourself to belong to a larger group, to your family, to your spiritual community, to this larger community, and to this world. Each of us is a necessary component of this life. We are not whole without each and every one of us right now. And so as we move into a place of prayer and declaring the truth that this life is blessed, that goodness shall reign, that there are blessings for all people in all places right now. When we use our word to declare that, to know it, to see it, to declare it, it comes into manifestation through that easy, silent way that Ernest Holmes talks about. We don't have to effort to create something, we just need to know the truth. But getting to the place of knowing the truth sometimes can be the rough spot of it. We have to do the work. We have to be present with ourselves and allow ourselves to awaken, to let life awaken us to what the truth really is. And so on this day, I'm knowing for each and every one of us that we awaken to the gifts that we are, that we surrender that which we hold against ourselves, and we can freely practice forgiveness and surrendering that baggage. Because when we can do that, we can see clearly. We can see clearly the gift that each of us are to the world. We can see the love of God moving through us, and we can see the love alive within each and every one of us, each and every person around you, and then you can share it. Because God is love, and life is love, and each and every one of us are infused with life. So that means we're loved, and so it is.